I want to bring up Louie, and so Louie was probably already a part of Lighthouse 21 when you came on board.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Louie to me is one of the most important people of Lighthouse 21 because Louie was the one who kept us all together. Right. And what I mean by that is he was the one who was friends with Rick, and the history goes back, and then Rick's brother. And then you have the relationship with him and Ted, and Ted and Rick had a relationship, but most of everything, especially even with Rick Reynolds and then Jonathan, who was there later on, and then myself, Louie was hands down the creative guy, right? So he would come up with the flyers, and he would come up with like the graphics design and stuff. And where I worked so well with him was I'm the furthest thing from a graphic-y guy. So a lot of the times when he needed something, he would go ahead and he would design it, and then I would be the one who would end up coding the web page behind the scenes, right?
Right.
And so I loved working with him, and things for his church and things for other things. And then he ended up working at a couple other churches, playing, basically playing as a music director and stuff closer in Fort Worth. So Brandy and I would drive out and see him and spend, mornings after church with him, just fellowshipping. And like I said, it was a more peaceful time in our lives. It was a peaceful time. And I look back and, like I said, I want to thank you for the opportunity to reminisce about this, because it definitely brought back some tremendous memories, but also helps us put things in perspective of how far we've gone, but then also how far we've gone from things that are super important to us.
Yes.
Most people don't know this, except unless you're at my wedding. Louie was the pastor who married my wife and I.
Okay.
And so we have this extra connection with him, and was saddened when he passed away. But
right.
So Louie required premarital counseling and all this other kind of stuff. And our premarital counseling ended up being Brandy and I would go to the radio station on Saturday nights, and then we'd hang out at Bennigan's. And that was our premarital counseling. It was awesome because we didn't realize it at the time, but some of the things that he was talking to us about our beliefs and faith and structure and how we view our relationship with God and the family and stuff was just conversation he was having. And, when we look back, that was probably, some of our happiest times as a couple. And then we eventually, become husband and wife and start a family. But those times, I think, were crucial to the foundation of the relationship that we still have today.
We've had a difficult time finding pictures that were on the website. That the Wayback Machine is getting forgetful, or I don't know exactly how it, because there's some photos that are still there, and then there's some that are missing. And so every time I looked at everything that it still had, and there was nothing of Louie, you were able to provide a photo of your wedding with Louie and you and your bride. And so we'll be able to have a picture of him on our website, which will be powerfm.rocks.
So just to kind of put some perspective into that, the picture I sent you was actually the rehearsal dinner the night before our wedding.
Okay.
May 27, 2025. We'll be married 25 years.
Wow.
So just to kind of put the things in perspective,
yes.
We still like each other too.
Well, here's the crazy thing about on your page on the website. There is no way I'm going to be able to, crop out Abraham Lincoln, the girl you married. And the interesting thing is, whenever you had photos of you on the Lighthouse 21, she was always with you in those two. And so this will be very, very natural and fitting that both of you are going to be on your page when I get that all worked up.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, we've kind of gone back and especially when we look back at the beginning of our, marriage and relationship, there was so much that was revolved around what we did on Saturday nights. And in fact, prior to being married, that was our Saturday night date. We went and hung out at the radio station, and she became a good roadie. She'd help me carry in the computers, because what we were doing was carting in basically a mobile, because you got to remember, this was prior to even good laptops. So I was carrying in desktops with two monitors.
I remember that now. Boy, there was a lot of gear. There was a lot of gear.
Yeah, so I eventually put it in a tub, and I basically made my own rolling cases, because this stuff technology-wise just didn't exist. I mean, the technology that I had back then, I'm sure our phones are probably more powerful than that, right? But it was one of those things where, as it got condensed. So anyway, so we would go to the station, and we would basically set everything up. And so each time we would set up, I would take the feedback from that evening, and then we would always talk about it at Bennigan's, or we ended up going to the Wild Turkey tour towards the end, which was fun in a whole other right. So we would go there and basically kind of have a post-mortem of the show, like what was good, what was bad. And I'd always be thinking what else we could do so I could continue and add the technology angle, which was emerging so much at that time. And like I said, it wasn't for forethought of, hey, this is going to generate revenue, it's going to generate buzz. To be honest, I was doing what I kind of thought was cool. And, you know, or what I would want to experience if I was on the other end of it as I'm kind of looking at the emerging technology angle.
Yes,
so,
you were exploring what was the possibilities.
When you look back at what we did during that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I even went back and there were some show recordings and stuff. I happen to have a recording here and there, and I think I only have like one sound check of Louie.
Oh.
I mean, it was so frustrating because there was so much great conversation we had. I mean, you know, there was what was his name? Robbie Rush would come in. He was the ex-Satanist guy. And then we'd always I got to do one show every year where, because this is just me, and if you know my personality, you'd appreciate the dark humor in this, and that is women don't look better in hats on Easter at church. Prove me wrong. Yeah, I mean, you know, and then the other one was that I would always around the same time. So Rick would, like, you know, when he basically just kind of wanted to have some fun in the evening, I would pose the question of, prove me wrong that it is not illegal to put your children in the bluebonnets on the side of the road, because you're technically damaging the state flower in Texas. So therefore, every child photo sitting in bluebonnets needs to be taken down. Prove me wrong. Those were always fun shows because, you know, I'm technically right, but do you really want to pick that for your argument? Well, that night I did. So, you know, it was fun because, and at the end of the day, we were just friends talking, listening to music, honestly.
Yeah.
And we were playing what we wanted to play, except the ones you wouldn't let us play. And which was just about most everything by Between Thieves, also known as Judah. There was one that I still remember getting into a polite argument with you on, was the one that was the hidden track that actually was them reading the this person begot this person begot this person begot this person, which was them reading scripture directly, and you wouldn't let us play it, or Stan wouldn't let us play it, or somebody wouldn't let us play it. And so I would always just pick that just to be a turd, but that's just my personality.
Okay. So. Maybe we can find that, and we can pirate it and put it on the YouTube channel, and everybody can hear it and see if. But
so again, it's the world was different, but also though, right? And I've talked to Brandy about this, and again, this is my personal Brian Oakes opinion. So put all the disclaimers you want. I don't really care for Christian music nowadays because it's really more self-serving. It's not really that good. But if you look back between, let's say, the 95s to the early 2000s, it rocked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There were some awesome, I mean, between Miss Angie, between Seventh Day Slumber, between all the Panheads, between POD, there was some good music. And,
we introduced some groups, you know, basically Judah and finally when they become Between Thieves and really get the good studio time and being able to have the good mastering and everything is to make it sound big. You know, we played, most record companies would, you know, release one or two singles off an album and be happy with that. But we played everything that would be approved lyrically, that like it was released. And sometimes we would make record companies mad because if we would go we might as well just start from the top. You know, cut one, cut two, cut three, and then they come back, you know, 7 months later going, well, you know, and we've already played the fire out of it. And now they want it to be the single so it can chart nationally. Yeah, so we were always. But
it was one.
Go ahead.
It was one of those things, though. When you look back at the time, musically, lyrically, with the individuals involved, and what was happening on the other nights of the station as well, it was like the perfect time, because where everybody was, where they were in their own personal lives, then musically, and then culturally, where we were. I mean, the simple fact that you had the ability as a teenager in a youth group to actually go to a Christian club and listen to music that world just doesn't exist anymore.
That is so true. I've just watched several documentaries, and they're kind of depressing, but it's essentially the death of radio. And we as Power FM sort of lasted a little bit longer. The rest of the the secular world got gobbled up by about three corporations. Everybody got fired, and everything was automated, and we got to hang on for just a little while longer till 2015, which was much longer than they pretty much. It was the late 90s and early 2000s when all the radio stations sort of consolidated, so to speak. But you're right about what was so spectacular and special, and that we'll never get back, is that community of everybody listening to the same thing, and then being able to get together and have that in common. There was no Apple iPods. There was no MP3s and downloading stuff. And you listened to the radio, and we were a much more connected community of people.
Well, yeah, you also had churches though, right? And you had active youth groups, and the youth groups themselves would make going to the concert, and the fact that you had the local concerts, right? I mean, now they have to be fairly large. We're talking small indie band. I remember the stuff that Matt was doing in Irving, just a little, the indie stuff that we would show up to, or just the simple fact, because I knew Greg Richards at the Light Spot out in Kaufman, right?
Right.
Is that the simple fact that they had a club that was, and this was different than the Door and some of the other ones, or Metroplex Church up in Hurst, Bedford, wherever they were. I mean, those were kind of offshoots of a church, but to simply at that time have the Light Spot just be a standalone club, or the Door. And here's the other thing. You had groups of kids who could go there, be dropped off, and they would behave themselves was a tremendous thing as well. And so, the world just doesn't exist like that anymore. But, personally, I'm so thankful for that time, because it molded and shaped a lot of how and what I believe now. It helped foster a, awesome marriage and relationship with my wife, and longstanding friends with Brian. Louie's passed away. Rick Reynolds has passed away. Even Ted, and I still love Rick to death.
Yeah, Rick's awesome. Always has been. Yeah. I've known him since the 80s. I'm looking forward to our chat.